I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today, I'm going to be talking about two different tarot readings, both in the shape of the Celtic Cross. The first was done for me by Isaac Middle of Down the Wombat Hole, and he used me as a signifier and then did this reading using the traditional, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck from 1909. And then the other one, which I had done prior, was from the Universal Folk Tarot. And this is a contemporary deck that uses indigenous imagery and also is very feminine. So I want to compare the results of both of those. Let's look at this. This episode will also include a cameo appearance. To cut to the crux, so to speak, what I'm going to be concluding is that this is not a personal message to me in either reading, that what we're looking at is an archetypal journey. And the word archetype has a hex word in it. It is archon. It is hierarchy. It is the rulers, the inheritance of the rulers. And I'm going to be looking at Isaac's reading as one that tells the journey of how we went from the goddess to the authoritarian male. And then I'm going to be looking at the other reading that I did as the journey back and how we get from there back to the goddess. So that's what we're up to. The signifier card that Isaac chose for me was the Queen of Pentacles. And I think that was a very powerful choice because what we're talking about is that magic, is divination. And Divi comes from Devi, which was the goddess. So devil was a way of transforming the goddess into evil, into the devil, into Eve, which is evil. If you look at the imagery that is in this very masculine deck, the Queen of Pentacles looks like she's a man. She almost looks like she has a mustache. She seems very weighed down by her crown. She is bowed over this pentacle. And the pentacle, I am really wondering whether that was actually a symbol of the cult of Set, which became Satan. Because the hexagram and all the hexes of the six-pointed star, those I think have a different magic power, and then they got transformed into 666, the sign of the devil. But I think they were really the sign of the goddess. In this case, she's holding a pentacle that is kind of like a big, heavy gold coin. She has a headdress that looks like the snake, which we know was the symbol of the goddess. And this has a feeling of being ominous. The first one Isaac chose was the King of Cups. This represents the current situation. And by current, I mean 5,000 years ago. Look at this guy. He looks like a total wimp. He's got a big goblet and a fancy hat. But I would never trust this guy to protect the goddess. Isaac then chose what was the cross, the thing that blocks the current situation? What creates that conflict? This was the reverse 9 of Wands. So the wands keep coming up. They're that symbol of magic. They're also kind of like a shepherd's crook, which really comes in with the cult of Set. In this case, it is all those wands that are changing the situation from the King of Cups that is supposed to be protecting the goddess and the Queen of Pentacles, but is not doing a good job. Next, we have what is behind in the distant past. And this was the 6 of Pentacles, Pentacles coming up again. As you can see, this is a very wealthy man holding the scales of judgment in one hand, scattering coins to the beggars with the other. I believe that what Margaret and Alice would call this is a philanthropath. This is the slimy guys who say, oh yes, I'm so charitable. Look at me scattering my coins. Next, we have what is below in the recent past. This is the Five of Cups. And even though it's cups, it is that five, that pentacle five again. This has a figure in a long black robe, looking like death. It could be a man, could be a woman, looking at three cups that are just spilled, that means of generosity, the means of self-reliance, gone, not even used by someone else, but just wasted on the ground and never to be filled again. Next is what's above, what crowns him. And it is always a hymn in the traditional reading. I think that's very significant. What Isaac picked here was the Three of Swords. And Isaac flinched because he was reading this as my personal reading. And he did kind of a whoa when he chose it, because it is never a good thing, that Three of Swords. In this case, it's pictured going through a heart. And that is what crowned the masculine god, the one who stole all of the resourcefulness from the people, is that he was crowned with blood, three different swords going through the heart. That Three of Swords was reversed, but I don't know if it makes any difference if the sword goes up or the sword goes down. The next one is the immediate future, and this was judgment reversed. So it shows all of these naked people who are at the top, and then there's the angel blowing the trumpet with that sinister red cross on the side. This talks about, in my book, how when you inflict judgment on people, it always comes back on you. This is exactly what the Bible does, and all those scriptures, is that they say we eat of the tree of judgment, the knowledge of good versus evil. And what that did was create evil because it made it our job to judge. Last, we have a 4-card progression, and it starts at the bottom with the querent's attitude. And because I'm taking the querent as the hexing cult of Set, this current attitude is the 6 of Wands. Back to our wands, back to our 6. And it shows a victorious riding knight who has the laurel wreath indicating victory on the top of them. Yes, that's what they think. They think we have won. Next, we have the house, the home or work environment. And this was the Queen of Wands. Once again, we've got that imperious royalty, and we've got the wands, that magic element. And then, if you look at the picture, she is surrounded by Merovingian dynasty occult imagery. There are all the animals, there's the colors. This is a very ominous kind of card. This is not a benevolent queen. This is one who is quick and fiery of temper. The penultimate card is the 4 of Swords, representing our hopes and fears. And any hopes you had are dashed by this. It is a man laid out dead on top of the coffin with 3 swords hanging over him, or actually under him, since this is reversed. There is no hope. Give it up, anyone who thought the men were going to save you. And last, we have the outcome. Where has all of this headed? The King of Wands. And so you have this red-headed, going back to the Hekakasut, the hexing cult of Set, and how the pharaohs had red hair after they had usurped the house of the goddess. And then again, he has all the Merovingian dynasty, all the occult symbology behind him. He's holding a living staff, and he is not smiling. He is authoritarian, demanding, strong-willed, and is ready to rule. They say he is noble, but noble is the caste system. It is not a characteristic. when they were saying, oh, someone is noble to mean that they were a good person, that's not really the case. Everybody during that time knew that that had been reversed. So in a female reading, what Isaac says is that this can represent an opportunity to network and conference with males. If Isaac thinks that's what it's telling me, he's got another think coming. Next, we'll be looking at the feminine side. And to prepare for that, I want to talk a little bit about how things were during the time of the goddess, before all of this happened. First, I'll start with what women are missing out on. In the temple grounds, they were called the paro, which was the house of the goddess, which got usurped and became the pharaoh. But at that time, it was a luxurious space that had agriculture and livestock, and all women and children were welcome. And that was where they would hold all of their living accommodations, so that there was no one who would be outside of the house. And then they would have the temple, and the priestesses and the high priestess would be at the temple. And any woman, whether married or not, was welcome to also join. The men would come to worship, and during the time they came to worship, the priestesses would choose among them for who they wanted to have sex with on the temple grounds. And in the temple, they would end up having no worries about paternity. That in Troy, for instance, women were considered to have their right to get themselves pregnant by the most handsome man they could find. So this was something that was just inclusive. What an incentive to go to church, guys. That's what we need to go back to, don't you think?
Your goblet, m'lady.
Thank you, Je t'aime.
You're welcome.
Now let's look at the return of the goddess from my Scottish Universal Folk Tarot deck. In this case, I chose my signifier randomly, and what I got was the Seven of Swords, which this deck calls the opportunist. It's a woman who is disguised, who is stealing away in the middle of the night, away from the camp, with 5 swords for her own self-preservation and protection. She needs stealth, she needs cunning, she needs some trickery. But what she's doing is for the good. And so therefore, she carries with her the monkey, which is a sign of quick-wittedness and cunning. This is what I think is our signifier. Next, we have the situation. And this card that I chose is the family. Now look at this. They are clearly Middle Eastern. The mother and father have established a safe place of security. The daughter is coming back to visit, and they have the 2 loyal hounds who stand guard. This brings to mind the matrilineal and matrifocal and matrilocal nature of the goddess community. The family is what it is all about, and making sure that that is a safe space. What is crossing that family? What is keeping that family from being able to be what they're meant to be? It is the King of Charms, the King of Pentacles again. He is clutching that necklace like his life depends on it. He has the horns in the background. He looks a little regretful, like maybe he realizes things don't have to be this way. This is what we need to change. What is below in the ancient past? How did it all start? Of course, with the Ace of Swords. The ace, the very beginning. And of course, swords. It was ruthlessness that caused all of this. It's not the navigator. It is more the schemer. What is behind in the recent past? It is the wishmaker, the 9 of Cups. And I think this is where creating a vision of what we want comes in, that we need to have this recent past of building up what are our wishes and making sure that we really know what it is we want. What is above us? What crowns us? Who is wearing the crown? The Fool. And the Seven of Swords says, maybe there's an opportunity in that. What lies in our immediate future ahead of us? Comfort and joy. The Two of Pentacles. In this, she's in a lush landscape, and she is striding forward with purpose and determination, but not with urgency. That everything is there to help her, and there are two different things that she needs to juggle with those pentacles. Maybe that's spirituality, and maybe that's economics, the management of the household. But she knows where she's going, and Goddess is there to help. Now we get to the final four cards that are the journey. It starts with the querent's current attitude. What is her feelings? And this came up with the Five of Cups again. In this case, rather than the death robe, it's a woman looking out over the river, and the three spilt cups are forming their own rivers. It's sorrow. And I thought, well, what do I have to feel sorry about? And I realized that since my three daughters are currently in Greece on their Mamma Mia sister trip without their Mia Mama, that I was missing out on a prime opportunity to wallow in self-pity. And I wondered, should I make chocolate mousse or waffles? And I decided both. That is looking at the cup still full. The next card describes the house, the external influences, the environment. And although I picked these from different parts of the deck, this was the Four of Cups. In this one, she has four different opportunities, going back to our opportunist. But she's not choosing to do them right now. She's waiting to unfurl in her own time. And it's clear that those opportunities will still be there when the time is right for her. I think this is so important for us to internalize. There's no need to rush. This is a matter of waiting and just knowing that we're on the right path. The penultimate card represents our hopes and our fears, and this continued the trend with the Three of Cups, or the Coven. And how could I not have my hopes for my little coven returning from Greece? But also, I think there are many covens that we have, and I'm debating what to call my little temple here, because it could be the Temple of the Grouchy Badger, which is a card that I pulled the other night, and also the color that I painted my temple. But also it could be the Temple of Crone Island, which someone told me about, where the women dance under the moonlight and imbibe substances and do magic rituals with saging and tarot cards. And perhaps that has been going on here. And then we have the final card, the outcome, where all of this is leading. And where is that? Justice. I have to read this to you. Justice, integrity, truth, law, cosmic order. The divine goddess of justice, truth, and cosmic order, Mot, holds up the scales of justice. Anubis has overseen the weighing of the heart ceremony in her halls, and she is ready to declare her findings. On one side of the scales is a human heart, and on the other, the stylized feather of truth, associated with thought and clarity of vision. A lifetime of living well with good values and morality will result in a light heart and safe passage forward. In this story, the passage leads to the afterlife and the eternal, but we can also take this metaphorically to mean, with a pure heart, you can continue on your way without further obstacles. The scales show mirrored versions of Horus the hawk, representing balance and accountability. Around her neck, Mot wears amulets and pendulums, showing her mastery of divination and ability to see through to the truth of the matter. She also wears a uraeus, symbolizing the goddess Waite, a powerful deity of unification and protection. Her ceremonial makeup echoes the eye of Waite to show that the truth will be protected. In this hall and in the darkness of her chambers, the sun god Ra still glitters in attendance. Blooms spring forth, showing that the divine beauty of nature is supportive in this process. Nature does not have the luxury of free will, yet it always stands in truth and perfection. This card serves as a reminder that all actions come with consequences. It speaks to our moral compass and asks us to live with the guidance of the great laws set down in history and interpreted from divine knowledge and commune. It asks us to look at the laws of nature and how we ultimately take responsibility for our choices and accountability for our actions. And isn't justice the exact opposite of judgment? Thank you to my lovely assistant, who Substackers will know as San Francisco. And thank you to Isaac Middle for instigating this fun and hopeful journey. For two more that spark off of Isaac Middle's astrology, here is Luna Plots a Revolution, and this is the Socks Box Miracle. Thank you for watching.